us where and when crimes have occurred, and they help us to predict where we should deploy to prevent future occurrences. When we identify hot spots and trends, we deploy our patrol officers and special mission units to those areas quickly. Providing timely information and education to the community is equally important. We regularly share our crime reports, release information to the press and on community listservs, and engage with the community so you are aware of the trends and can make informed decisions related to your safety and help us close cases by identifying suspects. I encourage you to visit our website and follow our social media accounts to receive this valuable information in real time. As an example, when we recently experienced robberies targeting our Latin construction workers, members of our Special Liaison Branch visited construction sites throughout the city to build relationships with these individuals and to inform them of the trends. We do everything we can to share information and to make sure that people feel comfortable reporting crimes to us when they happen so that we can help. Officers on foot, bikes, and scooters from our patrol section and the Community Focused Patrol Unit regularly interact with business owners in commercial areas that have experienced establishment robberies. We engage delivery drivers and rideshare drivers to remind them to not leave their vehicles idling and unattended, even if just for a second. And if need be, we ticket those unoccupied vehicles left running that are prime targets for theft and ultimately used in the sprees. We will continue these outreach and enforcement efforts. When offenses occur, our officers aid victims and track perpetrators with the goal of apprehending them quickly. We use cutting-edge technology and resources, including video surveillance, GPS location tracking, and license plate readers. When a crime happens, our patrol officers and crime suppression teams do everything they can in that very moment to catch the suspects. I assure you that our officers are not content to just respond and take a report and then let our great detectives handle the investigation. In the last 7 days, 11 robberies have been closed with arrests. Uniformed patrol members had a hand in many of those closures due to their quick and thorough initial responses to calls for help. This year, 62% of robbery offenses have been committed by suspects armed with guns. MPD remains focused on removing illegal guns from the community, and so far this year, our efforts have led to the recovery of nearly 800 guns. This is an increase of over 40% from the same time last year. We encourage the community to continue providing tips about illegal guns. You will be eligible for a cash reward of up to $2,500 for a tip leading to an arrest and a seizure of an illegal gun, plus an additional reward of up to $5,000 for a ghost gun or handgun equipped with an automatic conversion device. Finally, I'd like to highlight our investigative efforts. I feel confident in saying that our detectives are some of the most dedicated, talented, and unrelenting investigators in the nation. As you are aware, last year we created the Carjacking Task Force to investigate carjackings, pattern robberies, and other crimes involving vehicles across the region. This task force consists of a team of experienced detectives that specialize in the investigation of robberies and violent crimes. We have expanded the number of detectives on this task force and have received incredible support from our federal partners on many of these investigations. The Carjacking Task Force is effective because they are centrally located and they have a citywide view of crimes as they occur versus other detective units that are typically assigned geographically in one of our 7 districts. Removing the traditional siloing of information allows us to recognize patterns in real time, share information across jurisdictional lines, and quickly close cases. You heard Chief Conti and the PG County Chief Aziz, along with Mayor Bowser and County Executive Alsobrooks, speak about our partnership a few months ago. This increased information sharing is taking place at all levels, from the patrol officers that get to know their colleagues working on the other side of the state line, to the district commanders that hold regular meetings with their counterparts. When we close cases and hand them over to the United States Attorney's Office or the Office of the Attorney General, our involvement and yours does not end there. Our detectives continue to work with prosecutors to build stronger cases even after arrests are made. And we also rely on community members to continue their involvement. We publish data on arrests daily, and I encourage you to follow those cases as they progress through the courts. I also encourage those willing to provide impact statements to the courts to help illustrate the harm that these offenses cause, not only for the individual victims, but for also the community at large. We know that a very small percentage of the population commits a majority of the crime. This makes it that much more important for us as a justice system and as a community to ensure that our focus remains on holding repeat violent offenders accountable. I'm about to share some information on a few highly publicized cases that occurred earlier in the week in which dogs were stolen during robberies. In the last 2 days, thousands of messages, tweets, emails, and news stories have been shared about these two cases. That level of support and community engagement helps us close cases, and I ask the community to bring that same level of determination in helping us to close all cases. Over the course of the last 48 hours, detectives on the Carjacking Task Force, and we have some of them here today, worked tirelessly to investigate a violent crime spree that occurred during a 1-hour period in the afternoon of Wednesday, April 13th. In the first case, the victim was walking his dog in the 5400 block of Kansas Avenue Northwest at approximately 3:45 p.m. Armed suspects arrived in a vehicle and announced a robbery. They stole personal property and the victim's dog, a French bulldog named Bruno. Approximately 45 minutes later, in the 2000 block of 8th Street Northwest, armed suspects approached the victim and robbed him of his personal property and his dog, an Australian Shepherd named Pablo. Approximately 10 minutes later, in the 2100 block of 4th Street Northeast, occupants of a vehicle shot 2 men in the block before fleeing the scene. Less than 10 minutes after this shooting, the suspects committed another armed robbery in the 1300 block of 2nd Street Northeast. The lookout for the suspect vehicle was shared with officers across the city, and in less than 1 hour, 2 of our astute patrol officers in the 5th District located the vehicle. Investigators from the Carjacking Task Force focused their investigation on a residence nearby to where the vehicle was recovered. Without disclosing their specific investigative techniques, I can say that they were able to establish probable cause to search this residence for firearms-related evidence. Last night, around 8 p.m., members of the Carjacking Task Force, with the assistance from our Violent Crime Suppression Division and the 1st District Crime Suppression Team, executed a search warrant at a residence in the 1200 block of 18th Place Northeast. Immediately upon entering the residence, our investigators found Pablo, the stolen Australian Shepherd, in the living room. During a search of the residence, investigators also located 2 firearms, a .45 caliber pistol and an AR-15 style rifle. Drugs, over 100 rounds of ammunition, and other evidence was also seized from this location. 7 subjects, 4 adults and 3 juveniles, located inside the residence were arrested for receiving stolen property, Pablo, and for those charges related to the firearm and drug evidence found within the residence. In addition, one of the juveniles, a 15-year-old of Landon, Maryland, was also charged with 3 armed carjacking offenses that occurred during a spree the day before on April 12th. At this time, detectives are continuing their efforts to piece together the evidence collected over the last 48 hours. In consultation with our prosecutors, additional charges may be placed on these offenders. Detectives were still at the residence early this AM, so it is very early in the investigation, and we will provide additional details as they become available. Unfortunately, the French bulldog Bruno has not yet been recovered, and we urge anyone with information to please contact us on 202-727-9099 or by text message to 50411. You can remain anonymous. At this time, I'd be happy to answer questions. Yes, Sam.
We heard about a silver or gray Audi both times.
Yep, that's the vehicle that the officers in the 5th District recovered.
When did they recover that?
About an hour after we put the lookout for the same day. It was the same day.
So it was recovered before you actually recovered Bruno?
Yes, it
Right.
was. That was
Pablo.
That was the connection between the residents that we were able to get a search residence for over in Northeast. The car was located in that vicinity, and again, I still talk about the detectives. I'll praise them all day long. They were able to do some research, do some investigating, and that's how we got the search warrant for that apartment in that building over in Northeast, and that is when we recovered Pablo. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Megan from Channel 9 here.
Hi, Megan from Channel 9.
Do you guys have any new leads or information on where Bruno might be, or do you guys think the people that you arrested may have taken Bruno as well?
I think we think there's a connection there. We just have to find Bruno. And again, remember what I said though, there may be other cases that are going to be closed out with the arrest and with the search warrant. As the detectives of from our carjacking task force continue their investigation, I am confident there'll be other cases that will close.
Was Bruno by chance microchipped or anything like that?
I believe, was Bruno microchipped? I think he was. I think Bruno was microchipped.
Oh.
Yes.
The mayor and the chief have always contended that there's a small percentage of people that are committing a vast percentage of the crimes. Is this kind of an illustration of that in real time?
I think it really is. I think it lends credence, more credence, to what the mayor and the chief has been consistently saying, that we have to focus in on those repeat violent offenders. And you know, as the chief says, they have to come off the street. They have to go sit down somewhere for a little bit.
Do these be considered, I guess, those repeat violent offenders you're talking about? Do these guys have a record of doing this sort of thing before?
They have a criminal history, yes.
Can you elaborate?
On their criminal history?
Yeah.
Well, some of them, there are some robberies in there. There's some unlawful possession of a firearm, fugitive from justice, UUV, again, robbery. So, yes, we do have a history.
Was the Audi that was used on April 14th one of the 3 vehicles that was carjacked the day before?
That was a jump. Was that a jump in? I believe that was a jump in vehicle.
It was a stolen automobile.
Yeah.
Not one of the ones
It was
from,
not carjacked.
but not one of the ones from before. Okay.
No, it wasn't a carjacked vehicle.
Do you know where the jump in occurred?
It. Go ahead.
Uniblock of Rhode Island, Northeast.
You know
Yeah.
when?
I don't know the
Okay.
exact.
One, I think it might have been the day before. It was very recent. It was very recent.
What's the difference between a jump in and a carjacking?
So if you've heard us, Sam, in our multiple efforts to educate the community, there are certain areas where we have delivery drivers or folks that are just running in somewhere for a minute, and they're leaving their cars idling. They're not turning their vehicles off. So that's why we encourage for people to turn their vehicle off and lock the door to their vehicle. And you'll have a suspect that will come in. They're in the area looking, right? They're looking for the vehicles and we're looking for them. But they will jump into that car that is unlocked, it's idling, and they will flee in that vehicle. So when we say jump in, that is what we mean. And that's why it's so important to ensure, again, I'm going to say it again, that we're turning off our cars and we're locking our doors, because we are finding that these vehicles that are stolen are being used in crime sprees, they're being used in shootings, so they're being used in robbery sprees, in violent offenses. So that's why we have to start with something that may not seem so big, just a stolen car, but it really affects the violence that we experience in the city.
People, you said you arrested 3 people, 3 juveniles and 4 adults for receiving stolen property. Do you think that they're involved in the actual, let's say, taking of the dog?
That is what the detectives are, as we speak, investigating.
So you're not sure at this point?
Well, I'm not going to say at this point, right?
The mayor and the chiefs from Prince George's and DC had, they talked about how the ecosystem working together and everybody coming together. You have a 15-year-old, you said, who was arrested for 3 carjackings from Lanham, Maryland. So obviously crossing county lines.
Yep.
So how is this ecosystem that they spoke about in depth, how is it working?
So I think it's working well, because think how quickly, we talked about the carjacking task force. This task force has been created, and they meet with their partners. They share information across, state lines, because crime doesn't have a preference, right, for where it's occurring. So I think it's working very well, and you see that in what just happened here with this case, how quickly we were able to close it. So that ecosystem has to work well. We have to work across lines with each other, because criminals work across lines. And the quicker we're able to share that information, the more eyes that we have looking for our offenders, or identifying our suspects, or recovering the stolen cars that are used.
Crime was once was believed to be a thing that happened at night. All of this happened in broad daylight.
It did.
What do you say to people to, one, feel safe in their communities, and then to the people who would be bold enough and who are bold enough to commit these crimes in broad daylight?
So what I would say, I think that it is to commit these types of crimes in broad daylight. while people are just going about their business, enjoying their day, whether they're going to the grocery store, whether they're going to work, to commit these crimes in broad daylight, I think is unacceptable. So that is what I'm going to say. It's unacceptable. It's such a danger to the community. It's thoughtless. It is folks aren't thinking of the consequence of what their actions look like. And we should be, I tell everyone, my 7-year-old's in there with me now. I live in the district, and I should be able to walk down the street with my kid just like they should be able to walk down the street and walk their dog. That's their baby right there, right? And so, you know, it's frustrating to see people intrude so carelessly in us just living our lives, right? And so we really have to, that's why we have to maintain our focus. We have to, I'm going to say this, you know, when the mayor asked in the budget for the increases, we really need to get those things funded. We need to get more officers. You guys have been working, what, 48 hours, probably at least 48, 50, 60 hours on this. They have families too, and they need to be able to go home, right? But if there's a hot case, they're going to stay. But that's why I think we need to go ahead. We have to fund what the ask is, because we cannot tolerate in any way, shape, or form having this type of activity in our city, but much less during our day when we're populated.
Could you speak to the relief that you all felt when you realized that Pablo was safe? And also, if I could just ask briefly about the 2 bodies that were found in the Potomac River, if there have been any updates into that investigation?
So the relief that the officers felt, or the relief that...
Well, that you guys, having worked so hard. We had also spoken with Rick and Abby about their relief.
So the officers, and I said it earlier, between our patrol officers, our detectives, you know, our professional staff, the individuals that work at the Metropolitan Police Department are extremely committed, right? We don't want to see anyone hurt. We don't want to see anyone lose their, you know, their dog. So there is a sense of relief, and I'm sure that there is a sense of job well done, and we're happy that we're able to bring that closure. So I can only imagine what that felt like when they went through that door and they saw Pablo sitting there in that moment. I'm assuming that they were very excited. How'd you guys feel?
They were.
Yes, they were.
Hi, Chief. Stephanie.
Okay, we'll come right back to that. Yes, ma'am.
Channel 5. A couple questions on the suspects here. So the oldest appears to be 31, youngest appears to be 14. Can you tell us any more about their relationship? Do they know one another? Is there someone directing operations here? And with location, do you believe something was being directed out of that location?
Well, remember when I told you that the investigation is ongoing? They're investigating right now, and I'm sure those are questions that will be asked as we're debriefing the suspects if they talk to us, or as we progress in this investigation, we'll figure that out. What that connection looks like and how they all came together. And again, we'll provide some more information once we know it.
Has that location ever been investigated before for similar activity?
You said similar activity?
Any activity really.
Yeah.
But
I don't have that information necessarily. Yeah, we don't have that information, but that will, as we progress in this investigation, we'll figure that out.
And then I know you talked about the issue, especially, you know, U Street corridor stores and everything, in terms of people leaving their vehicles on and leaving cars running. But with the task force operating for a year now, is there any more you could say to what is driving all of these carjackings in the area, especially with the increase in juveniles participating in this?
Well, I think that is what we talk about, and what we've been consistently talking about is the behavior that our juveniles are engaged in. It's not fun. It's not funny. And so, of course, we talk about the development of juveniles. We talk about what those influences look like. We talk about them having programming and something to do. The mayor has pushed for the children to be back in school. That was a crucial part of this, getting the kids back in school. And so in that space, when we talk about what motivates a kid to commit a violent crime, I can't speak to what motivates them to do it, or even if they're developed enough to understand, but I certainly can't tell you what their motivation is. It's probably different in each case, but as the carjacking task force has stood up, and all of the entities that are investing in it, our goal is we don't want to have kids in the juvenile justice system, but we also cannot and will not tolerate folks having guns pointed in their face and their belongings taken.
And then I know, you know, the family received some tips about Trinidad and what was going on here. Can you tell us, what kind of outpouring of support and tips did you guys get? And how do you compare that to some of the other crimes? Like, obviously, a dog is very important, especially a puppy, but there's so many other crimes that go on. You don't hear anything from the community.
So what I asked in that space, and I said it in my remarks, right? There were thousands on top of thousands stories that were retweeted. They were, this really went viral, right? We want that same energy. We asked for that same energy when, like you said, when we had a 15-year-old, that was murdered on Monday night. And so we asked for that same energy from the community to contact us and share information. Let us know what you saw. Do you have any video? What do you think? So to your point, it was great in this case, but we would love to and we need to see that in all of our cases. And our community safety, it's an issue. Our community safety depends on that.
What about the shooting victims, excuse me? Can you say any more about that investigation? They're not charged in the shooting, any of the group here, and how
Are you
the
talking about
victims
the young man, Mr. Jackson, that I'm
No,
talking
I'm
about?
sorry. I'm talking about 2 people shot in this crime spree.
Oh, what is their condition?
What is their condition, and is there any update to whether they will be faced or charged with that shooting?
With this ADW, with this assault with a dangerous weapon. So the 2 individuals that were shot, they were not life-threatening injuries, so they will recover in that space. Did we close? We haven't charged yet, but that was the same vehicle involved. So as the investigation continues, again, I mentioned earlier, we expect to see that there'll be more cases closed.
One more question for you. I know Pablo's not impressed with us right now. He's sleeping.
Pablo has had a trying week. Yes.
Well, I want to ask you if you could speak to it, and you did speak to this a little bit about you and your son especially, but there are neighbors who say they don't feel safe. And we understand that this is not the D.C. that was during the crack epidemic, but this is still a lot that people are experiencing.
Yep.
Can you speak any more to that? As they see the arrests, the work that you're doing, but they still see all these crimes happening in their neighborhood. Thank you.
And so what happens, and again, that is the passion and the purpose in which I come to work and I do my job every day, and that we expect every member of this agency to come with that same urgency to prevent crime. So it really, for someone to not feel safe in our city, we'll work a little bit harder. We're going to work much harder to ensure that we can instill that sense of safety. And so when we talk about, you mentioned the ecosystem, it takes all of us to do that. So that means being very aware, taking advantage of the information that we're putting out when we're asking folks for information, and we all kind of play our part in the system to make our community safer. And if we're able to do that, and we're able to stand together shoulder to shoulder, right, and hold folks accountable, close these cases, connect these cases, and get those violent offenders off of our streets, we'll be able to instill a sense of calm and a sense of safety in our communities.
Following up on that, speaking to both the Pablo's owners and Bruno's owners, they're saying, thinking about switching up their typical routine. With, you touched on this happening in broad daylight. Is there anything you recommend to them or to other dog owners who might think maybe I should walk my dog a different way or go to only a dog park, or is there anything else that you think might keep them safe?
It's the same. I think it's the same thing. So when we talk about robberies, right, and we talk about becoming victims of crime, we always give the same tips, right? Be aware of your surroundings, right? And I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that you were not, right? But be aware of your surroundings, right? Don't I have my 7-year-old is in there, but my puppy is with me as well. So I am one of those folks that are out walking a dog. And so I am very conscientious because I'm very aware, of what the possibilities are, to ensure that I kind of keep my head on a swivel. I'm not looking down at my phone. I'm walking with a purpose, trying to get to where I need to get to. And so just kind of moving yourself out of those, out of that space where we're not cognizant of what is going on around us. And if something does happen, make sure that you kind of take in what is going on so that you can be a good witness. Right? We need a good witness. So take in what you're seeing. What do they look like? What are they wearing? That makes it that gives us a better chance. I talked about those patrol officers that responded, and because of the way that they responded to some of those scenes, they were able to make those closures on scene versus kind of the investigative process leading us to the suspect. And that is due to we're able to get good video, we're able to get good pictures, our response time, all of those things. So those are some of the things that we ask folks to do as they go about their day. And sometimes I'm guilty of it too when I'm walking my dog, and I have to remember to put my phone back in my pocket.
What do they do when they are faced with that?
So it's a decision that an individual makes in the moment. But we always say you don't have to, but we prefer that you comply with what it is that that person is asking you to do in that moment, so that we can, it's just, if there were guns involved, right? We don't want to run the risk of, someone getting shot, killed, maimed, whatever that looks like, when we know that we're coming right behind and we're going to put our best foot forward to making sure that we're getting the dog back, we're getting, the property back, whatever that looks like, we're going to come and we're going to put our best foot forward to get that back for you. You know what I mean? Yeah, makes sense? All right.
Do you think that needs to go back to, there needs to be maybe tougher punishments? I know you said you don't want to criminalize young people, because that could follow them for the rest of their lives, but does there need to be tougher punishments for people who are younger when they commit these types of crimes?
And what I'm saying is, right, they have to, and the chief has said it, they have to come, whatever that help is that they need, right, depending on the age, kind of what's going on, because we want to rehabilitate, right? And no, that is what should be in place for those young folks that are going out putting guns in people's faces and taking cars. You shouldn't even be driving, much less taking a car, right? So I don't think anyone is advocating that they go to jail for the rest of their life, right? But they should go someplace where they can get the help and the services that they need so that they can become a productive member of society, right? We have those investments that are being made. They just can't be back on the street to do it again to someone else. Because keep in mind, what did I say? There were 3. That's that we know right now. That's what we have right now. Our great detectives are going to they're going to go in through all the cases, and there might be more. Right?
Chief, you hit it a few times that you expect more arrests in connection with this, that you're following up more stuff. How much bigger could this network of guys who are doing these kind of crimes be, and those that are still out there right now, how comfortable should they feel that they're going to be able to stay out there for a little while and keep doing what they're doing?
Well, I won't say that it's a network, because remember when we talk about a spree, that can be one person. Think about the time frame that I laid out for you over that 1 hour period. That could have been one person doing that, right? So we have those circumstances, and we've had those situations where we have one person committing multiple offenses quickly, right? So in that space, how you said how comfortable should they feel to continue to be out in the street committing this crime? Should they be comfortable at all? No, because our task force is on it, and our patrol members.
But are you close to making more arrests in connection with this, and maybe how many more people do you think could be connected in one way or another?
I don't have that estimation. Again, I said it earlier, we have to continue on with this investigation and see where it leads us. I'm sorry?
The changes proposed, does it help police if carjacking is folded under robbery?
Well, they are they're the same. Carjacking is under robbery, and I believe that
But they would do away with carjacking, right?
I'm sorry.
The proposals to do away with carjacking and include that under robbery.
So your question is, does it
help police? Does that help police?
I don't think so, because the sentence is still the time that you're facing. I feel like it's still similar, right?
It would depend on the sentence.
Yeah, it would depend on what the sentences are calling for, what those guidelines look like. And I don't have that in front of me right now. Anything else? The bodies. The bodies that you don't have an update on it? Okay, we'll get that to you. Kristen will get that to you. Okay? Anything else? Thank you all. All right.